Yes, Francis Trouble, the Strokes record that you never had, holds up. Francis Trouble by Albert Hammond Jr. is, come on, it's the greatest Strokes record um, since the Strokes decided to not be a good band in 2006. Um, or I guess in 2007 when they broke up and then tried to get back together, and it was like, it's like, is it like when Kiss got back together and like, not the time in like 2000, but the time like where they're breaking apart and they're like, let's do solo records and we'll come back for Unmasked. And then like the friggin' Ace Frehley songs were really good, but the rest was like fine. Um, it kind of feels like what happened to Strokes, but that did not happen on Francis Trouble. Albert Hammond Jr. It's like so good, so good. There's no way to even talk about how good this record is. So I'm trying to think if there's a single song that isn't incredible. There's not. This is the best record. This is one of the best records of all time. This is up there with the first three Strokes records, the first two Arctic Monkeys records, the first two Raw Blood records, the first two Cage the Elephant records, all of the Franz Ferdinand records. This is much better than anything the Strokes have done since 2006 with First Impressions of Earth. This is much better. It rocks hard. Beatings in downtown. It's super catchy. It's super hooky. But then, like, say it matters, even ain't too close, then it ain't to me. On like T for Two, and then tell all your friends that we burn at both ends. Doom, 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 down, down, doom, 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 doom. Ding, ding, collisions in the passing lane. Do, 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 do. Turning signal lets me up, but nothing changed. Down, down. Light lines, tough breaks, working all the time. Oh, it's just so like when this album goes down, it goes down and it nails it. This is a record where like when it's a slower, poppier, or moodier song, it's because it's actually good. It's not because the rock band decided to be bad and stopped having taste and stopped having standards for themselves. This is like Albert Hammond Jr. did not have to make this. He didn't have to make this, and it's so good. It is insanely good. What did Enemy called it? Frenetic surf rock. Sure, I'm gonna call it Francis Trouble, because he just. I think DVSL or one of those songs does that, and I played it for my cousin. He's like, "It's Saturday" by Elton John. Saturday, 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 and I reject it. No, this is the Strokes record we didn't get, but we did get it though. If let's say like the Strokes just broke up in 2007, they didn't come back together. And then there was like an EP of like a couple songs that would have came out. That would have been the only good songs that came out from them in the next 35 songs they released. So let's say Taken for a Fool. What's the other ones? Machu Picchu. And whatever it is. There's another one off Angles. It's really good. It's the hit. And then Oblivious off that EP and whatever the other song is off that EP. And then 50-50 and Welcome to Japan. If those songs just came out as like, even then, those songs could die. Like, if it meant the Strokes didn't make the other bad music it took for them to get those 7 good songs. If the Strokes just like stopped being a band, fine. I'm of the opinion that if you're a band like that, though, you might as well just say like the New Strokes and hire a bunch of new guys to just play the old songs. And if they are in the same vein, they could write new songs. And I think you could do the Strokes like Batman, like a TV show. Yeah, it's going to be a different version of Batman. Um, but it feels like with bands, for some reason, we do this where it's like, okay, like imagine Michael Keaton as Batman, right? And he stops being Batman. But instead of going to George Clooney and Val Kilmer, um, Batman just turned into Beetlejuice. I think he did Beetlejuice before that, but let's say turn into Birdman, or just turned into a different Michael Keaton movie. It turned into him playing the Vulture in Spider-Man: Homecoming. You would be like, wait a minute. You know what I'm saying? Like, imagine if like one of the James Bond actors, whoever, let's say, Sean Connery. No, but let's say like you just instead of replacing the people and keeping the franchise going, they insist on keeping the original people, like the Star Wars, like they did with the old people. You should just recast them. It's like what they do with franchises and film and stuff. It's just recast. Or if you're like the WWE, you're like, yeah, John Cena's gone, in the version that he was for so long, but like put in new talent, new people who are going to be there. And so with rock music, maybe you don't want to put a band that's like called The Strokes 2, who play all the old Strokes song and actually sound like them, and then maybe write their own music. Strokes the reboot, but with a new cast of characters. Maybe you don't want to do that, but at least put on game like actually good bands instead of bands that are more like shitty pop like you're doing now. Um, but Albert Hammond Jr. did not do that. He made a really good record. The new record from him, Melodies on Hiatus. I didn't really listen to it. I tried listening to the singles, and I just was like, kind of sounded more like the new Strokes than it did Francis Trouble, and so that was disconcerting to say the least. Um, God damn it, guys! I mean, strangers, how strange the feeling to be strangers. Yeah, this album is really good. It's upbeat, light, like rock, but it's still a good rock album. It's so just good. It's not that heavy, it's not that aggressive, it's not that hard, but it's just super fun and super good. There are moments that get really like kind of like intense. It's extremely creative. It has a really focused vision. And even like looking at the video of them playing it live, like go look at Albert Hammond Jr. Live, like 2018, 2019, because it came out in March of 2018. Go look at them in like summer of 2018 playing festivals and stuff. So much fun. They're just having so much fun. Albert's like jumping around singing. And the album's basically like about how Albert Hammond Jr., when he was in the womb, he had a twin brother who got miscarried. And so just thinking about what would have happened with his twin brother Francis, and he kind of made that into like an alternate identity, who's kind of more an energetic, maybe more upbeat version of him. And so this is kind of like, you know, kind of like incorporating that idea of that alter ego, that could have been his twin brother into who he is as a person. So it's just kind of like, kind of heavy stuff, but also just kind of interesting. And he was doing, drugs and stuff and survived like some, heroin and cocaine problems. I think that's what I was saying. Maybe it was ketamine or whatever. Um, and so he had a new lease on life. And then, combined with that story about his brother, you get something where he actually put his ass into it. And it's really good. I can't say that much for Melodies on Hiatus. I don't know. I didn't listen to it. There is one other song from him you should listen to, though. You need to hear on the third album, the one before this, Caught by My Shadow. That's an incredibly good song. Caught by My Shadow, really good. And then this record is really good. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what to even say about this record. It's good. Just listen to it. Set to Attack. Hold on, hold on, hold on. It's not melancholic, but it's very like sentimental and good. And it makes you just kind of appreciate like who you've got around you. You become very grateful and you don't take things for granted. No, you don't take them as granted when you listen to this record. So that's kind of how I feel. when I listened to it. Yeah, and T for Two is super intense. Strangers is really good. T for Two has an incredible saxophone solo. Um, Everything's just in service of the record being good. That's really what's going on here. It doesn't really seem like it's for his ego. It doesn't seem like anything like that, But I think that idea of the Strokes as a franchise is kind of interesting, right? At a certain point, you become a franchise, and it's like either recast and do a new one, or use your thing to launch a new franchise. Um, and they kind of both did that. Like Albert's got this, and then Julian's got the Voidz, and the Voidz is really good, but weird, but good. But now I get scared because then they did whatever that song with, like, I think it was like Mac DeMarco or something, and it's like not good. Let me pull out that Voidz song while we're on the topic of side projects. The Voidz. I want to see the discography. The discography of the Voidz. What is Julian Casablanca in the Voidz discography? See the discography. Flexorcist. Yeah, who was that with? See, Flexorcist. This was not a good song. Flexorcist. Oh, is that on a collab? They just make that? Prophecy of the Dragon was kind of interesting. The Void's just been doing interesting stuff. Leave It in My Dreams is like a really good song. The Eternal Tao is weird but interesting. Permanent High School. Like Virtues or whatever, that album is interesting. Really interesting. Do I think I could do 2 videos on the Voidz? I was thinking I could do multiple videos, multiple podcasts on the Voidz. But it really is just like, yeah. Human Sadness, good. When Our Eagles Fly, good. Leave It in My Dreams, good. The Curious or whatever, good. All Words Are Made Up, Alienation, Pyramid of Bones is one of the greatest rock songs ever. Pyramid of Bones is like a old school, like classic hard rock, heavy metal type song. Eternal Town is weird. Eternal Town 2 is fun. And Flexorcist is not good. Prophecy of the Dragon was pretty interesting though. Yeah, it's pretty funny. Look at Tyranny. What else was on there? Oh, Business Dog, Xerox, Crunch Punch. That's an interesting record. Thought these was going to be like 3 or 4 videos, but kind of turning into one because it really is not much to say. I don't know. Jillian Plus Blanca. So Human Sadness is like really brutal, really intense. It's just so weird that these people couldn't come together and make good music. Like, I mean, in the sense that like, Julian Casablanca and The Void made an incredibly good album. Let's see this. The record's called Tyranny, and that's sort of what it's about. Julian Casablanca says rapacious oil companies and a not so free press and environmental depredation, money, healthcare, nightmares, the moon. It's not very sexy to talk about these things, especially in a place like America where they are like the best. But it just feels like we're inside that Versailles bubble. Oh, well, that's an interesting point. Kind of talking about the downfall of the American empire is kind of interesting. And this is the thing, we're going to dip a little into geopolitics here. But yeah, people like to talk about, there's kind of like, I'm very libertarian, very live and let live. And so when you get stuff like, there's, people try and pin people against each other. And this is where somebody like Noam Chomsky, right, who's an anarchist, but as of late, has basically been like, hey, whatever the government tells you, listen to them. Real anarchy is listening to the government and major corporations and not thinking for yourself. Do you see something there? You see that doesn't make sense? Anyways, and if you're unfamiliar, anarchy just means the absence of government. The idea being that typically, if you're an anarchist, you would presume something along the lines that governments are either inefficient and or immoral, and or ineffectual, immoral. I think those are really 2 grounds, right? And And so then people, kind of have different labels for what's an anarchist. Um, are you an anarchist communist or an anarchist capitalist? You're really splitting hairs because I think the main thing though is it's the shared idea of anarchy, and so meaning that government systems are unsustainable and typically immoral. But usually at the end of the day, they just don't work grammatically. They're not sustainable in the sense that like if you wanted to feed yourself, right, for forever, you live on an island and you've got a farm full of cows. If you just killed all the cows and ate them today, you wouldn't have any more food. But if you killed one and then had two and then killed two and had four, like if you only ate half of what you had, right? Like if you make money and you put a little bit of it away for savings so that if something does happen, it's an emergency, you have money in your rainy day fund, right? Instead of living paycheck to paycheck, or spending money you don't have, like credit cards and borrowing, going into debt. The idea that all government systems inherently have to like go into debt and or at some point they pop. There's a bubble. I think that tends to be a line of thought that ends up being kind of agreed upon by people who like to label themselves as anarchists. And I think that's kind of a concept that you're seeing here with Julian Casablancas, who's talking about how the Voidz record, Tyranny, um, talking about how like, yeah, they live in America, but like it feels like a bubble that's gonna pop, like culturally and societally. Like, you got all these homeless people, you got all this money going around, and everyone so successful, but nothing's actually getting solved, and things seem to be getting worse. Now, other parts of America, they vary, right? And even parts of a city vary. But I think on a macroeconomic trend, right, you're just looking at a societal level, well, you could say it's pretty resonant, right? And so then you're looking at something like, you know, why does that exist? And you would say probably because the American government has a massive military. They have massive military. Nothing wrong with that. Um, you can argue it. And basically that after World War II, the US government got everyone basically pinned to the US currency and US protection, and it basically became a unipolar moment, I think is what, you know, the neo-conservatives, meaning um, basically conservatives who want to like not necessarily even conserve values, but they believe it's a good idea to spread values and kind of dictate social policies, right? Meaning like gay people can't get married, straight people can't get married, right? Um, because and if you take the word conservatism, which means to conserve what already exists, if you're talking about a society hypothetically that was like, well, the standard is that people are gay, and we use in vitro fertilization to make children, but you're only allowed to be married if you're in a man man or woman woman relationship. Well, then conservative, you know, I guess socially conservative people, whatever that means, they would tend to agree with the idea that like in that context, if you're using the word socially conservative, well, then straight people shouldn't get married because only gay people are allowed to get married. And, like maybe 20, 15 years ago, it was because here the default was straight people got married, gay people couldn't get married. Socially conservative people would be like, you're going to break society down if like gay people get married. Now, has that happened? I don't know. Um, I wouldn't say that gay people getting married is is really my biggest concern, or do I think a factor in really anything? But I haven't really thought about it too long. Um, and I think the reason is because I think the fact that anyone's getting married and the government is telling them like, "Hey, you have to pay this money, or we're getting involved in your life and how you raise your kids and all that kind of stuff." That's kind of stuff where it's like you should make those agreements and make those things yourself. The fact that you're getting, you know, essentially the definition of a government is whatever body has the legal authority to initiate force and make threats of violence backed by force, right? And so if you look at a government, it's just a gang that gets to say, we're the official gang. We're not a gang. It's the only gang that, will basically, be able to say, we're not a gang, we're a government. We own everything. You're cool. And if you don't pay us the money, we're going to put you in a cage and force you to eat stuff. What if I resist and I don't want to do that? What if I say, no, this is my private property. I own this. I don't owe you any money. or anything, right? I live on a farm. Well, there was a thing like that. Happened in Waco, Texas. And people said that, and then FBI agents came in and killed all the women and children. And that's it's kind of what happened. It's kind of the history of America, really, of all governments, really, is that they're just whatever gang can get enough power that makes it taboo to even acknowledge the fact that they're a gang. And if you do, you become persona non grata. And then, the more streamlined they get with controlling schools, yada, yada, yada. And so now they can teach you, like I remember even when I was in like third or fifth grade, I was like, wait a minute. So there's the executive, the legislative, and oh my God, what's the other one? Judiciary branch of the government. I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, so the only way that they don't like abuse their power is there's three of them. You're like, and they check and balance each other. Like, okay, so this guy watches this guy, who watches that guy, who watches. They all watch each other like a triangle. What if they just all agreed to work together? Then there's no checks and no balances. And I kind of went like, this doesn't hold any water. This concept doesn't even begin to make sense. So I've been an anarchist since day one. I don't think the government as a concept makes sense. Well, I understand what it is, right? But I don't think it's productive. But I like the illusion that it's a balanced system that works. And so I think he's commenting on here is kind of the idea that like you have a bloated state where basically the corporations own the government, and then the intelligence agencies and apparatuses that have developed off of the government, almost as growths that now actually can control who goes into the spots in the government, along with the corporations, vying for power of who do they put in the different three branches. But the branches are going to work together anyways because they're listening to whatever these guys say. That idea that, you have, like a deep state, and you've got massive corporations, and they together pretty much just figure out, hey, if we work together, we could screw the American people, and also the whole world is dependent on us, so we could just print more money, we could do whatever the hell we want, and we have the biggest guns, we have the biggest, dick in town, so to speak. So if you try and mess with us, we're just gonna kill you. You're gonna, yeah, and then, well, how do you manipulate all these people? How do you do this? And what level of, the corporations are controlling the deep state versus the deep state's controlling the corporations? That's where we get into conspiracies like, Epstein, being an agent for, whatever government agencies to use to get blackmail and to manipulate, private industry. But they're all monopolized by the government to a certain extent, and the government's monopolized by private industry and the deep state. And to a certain extent, it's like, talk about free market and competition. It's like, this isn't competition when you've got a Bonnie, you've got a gang that can work with, like, imagine the big company can just pay them to break the kneecaps of the competitor. If you're running a race and the judge, if you can just pay the judge to break the other guy's kneecaps and then you win the prize money and then you always have the most prize money, that's the only way to get prize money in society or whatever, right? Like, you're always going to win and you're going to rig the game for you always because you're starting out. And so I don't think you'll ever get rid of violence, but at some point bubbles pop, and whether it happens tomorrow or in 30 years, we don't know. But I agree with Julian Casablanca that it feels like we're in that bubble. And it feels like every year since when this came out in 2013, 2014, it feels like every year since then we've gotten closer and closer to the bubble. So, do I think the U.S. government is going to default? Do I think the U.S. government's going to blow up? In the, not in the literal sense, but in the metaphorical sense, do I think it's going to, fall to pieces and there's going to be chaos and then maybe the military tries to take over or, some sort of thing? I don't know. There's a bubble. Things are unsustainable and they're going to pop eventually. So I agree with Julian Casablanca here that And he's right. He's right. Versailles. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's just where it's kind of interesting where like clearly Julian Casablanca is not stupid. Maybe he's just cynical. But then you see him doing stuff with the Voids, and it's really like on the money. It's really good. It's really interesting. It has a lot going on. Um, I guess Julian still plays with the Strokes because it's money and it's fun, and there's a little bit of nostalgia there. But I like the idea that if Julian did mostly the Voids concerts year round and just like did the Voids and worked on that, I think that'd be really good. I think that'd be incredible. But at the end of the day, I recommend Francis Trouble. Listen to Francis Trouble first, though. That's really solid across the board. Has nothing to do with anarchy. The Voids, I appreciate them because they're anarchists. By the way, I'm an anarchist, and all it means is I don't think the government is efficient or moral. That's all. That's all. That's all. And people tie in ideas of like authority, like oh fuck authority or whatever. That's a good Pennywise song. Fuck authority. But when you're talking about that concept of fuck authority, it's typically because the only reason you wouldn't, or people tend to not want to recognize the fact that all signs point to government being unsustainable, ineffectual, immoral, etc. Like compare the DMV to going to Walmart. Walmart is like cheap, easy, no friction. It's private industry, just people working together, organizing. Like if you're a greeter at Walmart and you can't get a job anywhere because like you're kind of like a little crazy, a little unhinged. And Walmart goes, hey, we'll pay you, and no one else will. They're like, hell yeah, I'll like just say hi to people. Welcome to Walmart. Welcome to Walmart. Welcome to Walmart. Welcome to Walmart. You don't gotta point a gun to anyone's head and say, get in the fucking Walmart front thing. Um, but the DMV, it's like works like shit, takes forever, yada yada yada. And so those things are obvious. And so it tends to be that the only people who wouldn't, or a common driver for people not wanting to acknowledge the fact that the state, the government, whatever, word you want to use for it, is ineffectual and immoral, especially when you take an unbiased look at history, it tends to show you that it's just an apparatus for unbridled and, you know, lightly mitigated just displays of violence and power. It's pretty much what it is. The biggest mass murderers in all the world have been government officials. So, I get that idea. I get that idea. Oh no, but yeah, so I'm an anarchist, libertarian, whatever the hell. I don't think the government should tell anyone what to do ever, ever. But does that mean you still pay your taxes wherever you live? Yeah. Does that mean you follow the law where you live? Yeah. But you understand that like the laws are, to a certain extent, there's things that are like evolutionary biology, right? And just you can logically deduce stuff like, okay, don't kill people because if you kill someone for no reason, well, don't kill people not out of self-defense, right? If you're just killing someone for fun, what stops you from killing me? So then I don't want to hang out with you, and then you get abandoned from society, right? Like if you think of how these things evolve, we clearly have proclivities to like do things that are pro-social, things that build society and work together. There's a reason we like people who help us because the people who liked people who didn't help them died because no one helped them, right? Like evolution kind of sorts that out. Now, if you don't believe in evolution, whatever. Just observe human interaction and behavior and what is now. If you don't agree on what caused it to be the current state. But if you look at what does exist and how humans do interact with each other, it becomes pretty clear that there are things that are kind of universally seen as moral and immoral. And those ones usually there's a much debate. Now people go, what's the age of consent? What makes sense? Yada yada yada. It ends up being cultural differences. Um, you know, at a certain point, but that's really irrelevant. Because, like, are the odds that the U.S., territories are going to turn into stateless places overnight? It's like, no. Even if the federal government did shit the bed, at least the county and local and city stuff would probably be the first place that kind of rebuilt and provide some level of structure. It's not like you go from everything being totally structured around government, things like, imagine if like the government banned people from building their own roads and they had to let the government take care of the roads. And the government just disappeared overnight. The roads don't disappear, but then citizens in different industries and private people and the companies that are contracted by the government to do that stuff would then be, probably hired by the people who live in those cities where the roads go to. Like if I live in one part of what town, I would hire, people to maintain the roads, yada, yada, yada. Nothing, what are we even talking about? Oh, whole point is most laws and things are arbitrary. Not all laws are completely arbitrary, though. Some of them are pretty, universal. But when it comes to what laws there are, you don't have a moral obligation to live in one place or another place, right? Based off their legal order. Really, you look at what is best for me in my life and me as an individual. If I want to come together and like have a family or group of people or community, I'm looking at that through the lens of me as the individual. What kind of group of people would I like to surround myself with? What kind of community would I like to build? You're not going like, I need a community and I need to put the community first. You're like, what community is worth putting their needs above your own, right? And you kind of look for that first. But so there's that weird dichotomy of individualism, right? Where it's like, I take care of myself so that when I choose to make myself feel better, I can take care of others, build a community. But I'm doing it for myself. I'm helping others because it makes me feel good, right? That's what charity is, right? So similarly, when you look at where to live, look at what laws favor you. Only point is to say, even if you're an anarchist or a libertarian, you think the government's illegitimate, you have no, moral claim to operate in any capacity, because they use involuntary methods through the threat of violence. On this, the Voidz and Francis Trouble review, honestly, whatever your opinion is, you got to follow the law. You can petition to change it, and if you think that petitioning is going to get you thrown in jail, then maybe you just vote with your feet. As long as you can move out of your country, you move out of your country, you go to someplace else. Or you move out of the city, you move out of the state, you move out of the, what do they call them in Canada? Province. You move to wherever you can, and you vote with your footsteps the same way you vote with your dollars. And you buy the products that are good and the products that you like and the service that you like. You go back to that restaurant. You don't go to the other one that you don't like. You do the same thing, but you still follow the law. Like if you go to a restaurant, here's the thing. Here's a good example. Go to a restaurant you don't like, and you're like, damn, that meal sucked, and this was overpriced. You don't not pay. You still pay. You're like, yeah, just in the future, I'm moving from this restaurant to the other one. Other one's better, like objectively, or at least subjectively to me. So likewise, if you're like, I don't like the state of California, and they charge me too much money, I'm going to go to Texas or Florida. You still pay your taxes in California. Then when you're in Texas and you're not there, you don't pay them because you paid the Texas tax. You see what I'm saying? Don't go around breaking the law unless you're not going to get caught. Then go break the law all you want. I'm just kidding. That's a joke. In Minecraft. Break the law in Minecraft. Anyways, there's a whole disclaimer to say. That's kind of the idea of anarchy. Anyways, so maybe like, well, how could you be rich and be an anarchist? You're like, you can understand that the game is rigged and then say, I'm still not going to lose because I'm going to win. Like, I'm going to be smart about what I choose to do and acquire wealth. Now, communism and Marxism in particular, Karl Marx invented communism. Oh, yeah. Anyways, the idea of, having money is immoral. That's immoral. That's a moral thing about wealth creation and division of labor and yada yada yada. That's all well and good, but that doesn't have to do with anarchy, right? In the same way that capitalism and thinking, more the Ayn Rand kind of way of thinking, where you're like, actually, the best thing you can do is make the most money and be the most self-interested, doesn't necessarily have a one-to-one with anarchism. There's anarchists who are capitalistic and think you should make as much money as possible, and there's anarchists who think having money is evil, kind of more the Puritan type of thing. And you see a lot of Christian sects kind of have a version of that, which is interesting because that's why you see a lot of people who are kind of like Christian conservative also demonize people who make money, even if they're a small business owner and they're not like, a billionaire, but they're just literally like someone who like, just owns a coffee shop or two, and they're really smart with their money, but also their employees like the job. Like, they're like, no, that person's evil. You're like, wait a minute. Okay, what would you do if you were your communist society? They're like, well, we would have a coffee commune. We would have a store ran by everyone. You're like, okay, well, who would own the keys? Well, the person who's been there the longest, who has seniority. You're like, so they don't make more money, but they do have more responsibility, which then gives them status, which is what money is tends to be a proxy for in a loose form. So you're like, you're still doing the same hierarchy stuff. You still have someone above someone else because they have a different level of responsibility. They're at a different level of responsibilities and of access and respect likewise. So that's some food for thought. Food for thought. Read the Anarchist Handbook by Michael Malice if you'd like some more kind of information on anarchism. And in that book, he presents the communist, he presents the capitalist, he presents everyone in between. I'm talking about the idea of anarchy. But if you would like to be familiarized with what Julian Casablanca I think that's the thesis of the Voidz, is that they're all kind of like anarchists. It really does seem like, especially the way they dress and just they're all very, a little bit all over the place. But just, yeah, with kind of that like stuff really talking about like the downfall of bubbles in society and like, so I would just check out the Anarchist Handbook by Michael Malice. Check out Francis Trouble by Albert Hammond Jr. Really good, and then check out the Voidz. What would I recommend from them? Check out Where No Eagles Fly and Leave Me in Dreams or whatever it's called. Check out those two, and then check out Pyramid of Bones. Pyramid of Bones is a really good rock song. Where No Eagles Fly is good. Human Sadness is gonna make you sad. Anyways, what's the next video I'm going to do? Let's look. What's the next video podcast I'm going to do? This was supposed to be 25 minutes. I made it a 40-minute podcast. Oh my God. Oh my God. This was supposed to be like so many episodes, but I actually turned it into like one episode. Like, oh my God, why would I even do that? Am I going to even do another episode tonight? Oh my God, I could do like so many more episodes tonight. Like, what am I doing? Like, what? Really? Ha, 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 ha. You guys got a double feature. Oh, and then one of the other guys is a band called CRX, which is fine. Strokes are great. First three albums are good. The other ones, don't listen to them. Anyways, Francis Trouble and the Voidz, though, that's like the next three albums you kind of want to listen to. That's going to be a lot more interesting. Francis Trouble is pretty much perfect album, 10 out of 10. And then select songs from the Voidz records, both of them, probably make a really good, 10 songs plus 10 from Francis Trouble. Plus the 7 good stroke songs after First Impressions of Earth. That gets you to 30 songs that are really good, plus the original stroke songs. So you're like, okay, I've got 30 kind of stroke songs. And then Julian Casablanca's solo record called whatever, what is it? Phrases for the Young. 11th Dimension is really good. And then I kind of honestly skipped the rest of that album. I just know that song. So listen to 11th Dimension and a bunch of the Voidz songs, probably like 10 of them, plus 10 songs off Francis Trouble, plus the 7 good stroke songs that came out in the last 3 records, including the EP. And that gets you to about a whole good kind of like Strokes having 60 really good songs instead of just 30 good ones and 30 bad ones. Just pretend the other songs don't exist. Really, just don't pretend. I might make a playlist for this if you want to go check out my Spotify, where I've got the Strokes, but the good Strokes. Anyways, I'm gonna use the restroom. Go check out my next video. I'm probably gonna talk about Marquee Moon. Oh, Marquee Moon. So there's a record that gets compared to the Strokes a lot. The people that are like, oh, the Strokes starting out, they sound like the Television, the band Television from the late '70s. And this was like a New York band. It's like super kind of like the Strokes in hindsight with their composition and songwriting, the different sounds and the different like way the singer kind of does stuff, but also very different. And the first time you listen to the record, you might hate it, but oh, it grows on you. You really like it's really fun. Like songs like Venus and the title song Marquee Moon is like an 11-minute song with great guitar solos, and not like Led Zeppelin, like Frank Zappa shred guitar solos. No, like just kind of cool, interesting stuff. Anyway, so go check out my video on Marquee Moon by Television. Okay, the coolest record you've never heard of. And you got 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You clicked it? Clicked it? I'll see you there. Rock on.